Hola Angelinos, bienvenidos to the Galaxy Guy podcast. Como siempre, I'm your host, Chris Maldonado. We thank you guys for joining us on the very last postseason, post-game show of the season. We have now entered the postseason. Here we are, boys. It was quite the season, 34 games, and it all came down to the wire this Sunday at the Dignity Health Sports Park, the LA Galaxy versus Minnesota United. Of course, if you're watching this by now, you already know the result. It was a tie, 3-3. The Galaxy failing to qualify for the playoffs yet again, another year without playoffs for the Galaxy. Very shameful, very hurtful. I'm still feeling that tie yesterday. I'm still feeling it. It just feels like a tremendous disappointment. I'm sure it's noticeable in our faces and the tone of our voices tonight. But we do have a great show, as usual. A lot of good stats, a lot of interesting stats that we compiled through this season. So we'll go through those. You guys know the usual suspects. We have with us Mr. Casey Cagle. How are you, Casey?
I'm hanging in there. You know, I had a pretty good Monday. I scored some tickets to some USL playoff games this coming weekend, and I also scored some tickets to the USA game on December 18th. So you can catch me there at Dignity Health Sports Park, catching the USA versus Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that should be a fun one.
So there will still be soccer at the Dignity Health Sports Park this year, just not LA Galaxy players. So looking forward to that. Casey, glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joining us tonight, also another one of the usuals. You guys know him, Matt, a.k.a. Matt Stradamus Granger. How are you tonight, Matt?
I'm doing awful. I'm so sad. I've been listening to Avril Lavigne all day.
Yeah. Been listening to Linkin Park.
You've been listening to Linkin Park?
Yeah.
I miss Chester. Rest in peace. And I'm drinking tea now. That's my new lifestyle. I drink tea and I listen to Avril. So thanks, LA Galaxy. This one I thought I couldn't get lower. You dragged me down lower.
It's like 2007 all over again. So it is what it is. I have been receiving a ton of messages today. I had a bit of a rant last night as I was leaving the stadium. I went on Instagram, posted that. A lot of people hit me up. They were saying, listen, what you're saying is so true. You're basically saying exactly how I felt. So we validate you guys, right? It's okay to feel how you're feeling right now. A lot of frustration, a lot of anger that I've been seeing towards the front office. Listen, let's not sugarcoat it. Since 1996 to 2016, the Galaxy had missed the playoffs a total of 3 times in their history. 3 times. Since then, 2017 to 2021, the Galaxy has missed the playoffs 4 times. 4 times. Qualifying in 2019 and then making a very, very early exit in the playoffs. So another season of mediocrity, guys, fair to say?
Easily.
Oh, below that.
Below
mediocrity. Below mediocrity.
And it seems for the most part that these last couple of years, this last half decade, it's kind of conditioned Galaxy fans to expect mediocrity and settle for mediocrity. You have to remember this is an LA Galaxy team that 14 seasons out of the past, 26 seasons in MLS, 14 of those past seasons, this team has qualified and advanced to the semifinals or greater. 14 seasons where the Galaxy has made it to the conference semifinals or better. So Galaxy fans used to expect at the very least this team to make playoffs, at the very least, if not go to a Western Conference final. Now people are willing to settle for just playoffs or a 7th seat in the playoffs, right? So a lot of heartache. We're going to talk about that. We have some very interesting stats. But first, I would like for us to just kind of get it out of the way. Let's vent, guys. How did you guys experience that game last night? What was the feeling that was going through you guys? Matt, let's start with you, man. How did you experience that game last night? How did you, when you found out that RSL had scored that goal?
Well, I think, sorry if my voice comes through kind of scratchy. It's lost.
Same.
Much like our hopes for playoffs. So I think when you watch that game, it was like a quintessential Galaxy season, like all crystallized, right? It's like we did all the things we always do all year. We come out super slow. in a game that we had to win. We dug ourselves into a really deep hole. We tried to fight back, and then we were ultimately like undone by our own hubris, right? Just like sloppiness.
Yeah.
The irony of this situation is that, Julian, who had held us up most of the season, cost us two mistakes and two direct goals. The one where he keeps the guy on sides, puts his hands up and stops play, that's on him. And then the one that he legitimately just kicked directly into goal, that one's also on him. But it was just like typical Galaxy stuff, I guess. It's funny, if you had brought a person, I think I brought like 10 people to the game. I did my best to pack the stadium for like 10 people to the game. And they hadn't seen any Galaxy games this season. If you had just seen that game, you knew what the Galaxy were all about. It was all there on display.
Yeah.
And then, I was sitting with my wife next to me. She was watching the RSL game on her phone. And it was just one of those things where you're so ready to yell out, like we're making playoffs. And RSL scores. And then you just look up and you look at your team and you just know it's not going to happen for you because we're not those people,
Yeah.
And to RSL's credit, and to their fans, I think I just feel like an overwhelming sense of jealousy, right? Because you look at that team, do all the things our team doesn't do. They go all the way to the death, and in spectacular fashion, a bicycle kick assist. They seize their opportunity for playoffs. Like what a moment for that team, for Krylak, for those fans, and it just feels like we're just never really going to get that moment as a team. At least that's how I personally felt. That was my experience for the game.
What about you, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, well, the entire game and the entire day for me was pure anxiety from, start to finish. Shout out to Kathy's Cookies. My friend and I had to buy a bucket of cookies to just nervously munch on the entire time because it was such high anxiety. And there were a couple of moments where we thought we had it in the bag. I think after we scored the third equalizing goal, we had probably two or three more opportunities on goal that were so close to going in, and to be so close and to feel that agony of, who was it, Tom Petty, that said, God, it's so painful when something that's so close can feel so far out of reach. And that's how it felt. That's exactly how it felt.
Let's talk about, people want to know some stats, right? I mean, we have some postseason stats that Casey can provide for us. He sent us the notes ahead of the show, and some phenomenal stuff in there that's very very interesting. Can you share some of those stats with us, Casey?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, in the regular season, the Galaxy obtained some pretty impressive stats throughout the league. We're second in MLS in total touches with 22,457.
Yeah.
Third in average possession with 54.3%. Second in MLS in aerial duel win percentage. Chicharito led the league with most non-penalty goals per 90 and non-penalty goals with 16. Araujo led the regular season in blocks with 104.
Wow.
Jonathan Bond ranked third in saves in the league with 118. And within the team, Araujo had the most starts this season with 32.
Wow. Some very good individual stats there. Jonathan Bond, third most saves. I mean, that's a testament to our defense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this was practically a brand new defense when you think about it. Julian Araujo is a guy that's returning, but this was his breakout season. Let's call it what it is. You had Jonathan Bond, Sega Coulibaly, who was brought on to be a starter, Derek Williams, who was brought on to be a starter, and Jorge Villafaña, who was brought on to be a starter. This was a brand new defense, right? Mm-hmm. You got rid of Rolf. Steris kind of saw very little playtime this season. You had the emergence of Nick Dupuy, who I am a fan of. I don't know, just feels like a lot of the same. Matt, let me ask you a question, and we can talk about this a bit. We naturally have to talk about it. It's the end of the season. Who was the most valuable player this year for the Galaxy?
For me, I think it was Chicharito. I had been very, very hard on him in 2020, and I made it known pretty publicly that I thought that he had come out fat, he was out of shape, he found a lot of excuses to not play in a year where everyone was going through very difficult stuff. It just felt like he completely like sheltered himself into like a turtle shell, even though everyone else was trying to push through. But to his credit, he came out very strong this year, as Casey pointed out. Most goals per 90 that aren't PK related, most goals that aren't PK related. He would have tied for second in the Golden Boot race despite missing something crazy like 10 to 12 games. Really speaks to how effective he was every time he went on the field. And then I think for me, just in the last game, for my MVP, it kind of solidified it. Chicha really did do everything he physically could do to try to will this team into the playoffs. Oftentimes it felt like he was just dragging this dead carcass of a midfield, across the finish line. And like, I wish I could use like a better analogy than that, but I can't think of anything more useless than our midfield. So for that, I think he's my MVP, just because, like I said, I did not have high expectations for him, but dollar for dollar, man, that guy really did deliver every time he went out there. I think the difference is like, I won't point out any names. Jonathan Dos Santos, people who kiss the crest but then don't give it their all when they get on the field. But Chicha, to his credit, like he's almost like Zlatan in that respect, where he doesn't need to kiss the crest because like he plays through his heart, right? And that's all you can really ask of a player. Chicha takes a lot of hits, he gets fouled a lot, but he just keeps coming. So for me, my MVP was Chicha. We'll see what next year brings. He's always has that lingering calf injury, but I just really admire that. Like when he goes out there, he gives it his all.
Yeah, he's got one more year to prove what he said. He said when he came here, we're gonna do cosas chingonas, and he said he was gonna get an MLS Cup for us. He has one more year to do that. I don't think you're gonna find a lot of people that are gonna not agree with you, Matt, when you say that Chicharito was your MVP. I don't think you can combine the next 4 or 5 players together and they didn't accumulate the same amount of goals combined, right? For the LA Galaxy. You look at teams like New England Revolution, the most successful team in MLS this season, and they had 3 players with triple-digit goals. Was it 3 or 4 players, something crazy like that? They were just scoring goals for fun. The LA Galaxy's second top goal scorer is a defensive player, which says a lot, right? That Chicharito still managed to get 17 goals, was it, on the end of the season? Tied 17. For Golden Boot. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Casey, who was your MVP this season?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily look at goal scoring. I'm just going to go ahead and give my MVP to Araujo just because of all of his individual performances this season and all of the times that he's been our man of the match. He carries a lot of that offensive load on his back as a right back in Major League Soccer, which says a lot, not only about this Galaxy team, but just about him as a player. He's so confident going forward. He tracks back super effectively. And for me, he plays for the badge every time he's out on the pitch, and I give him my MVP award for this season.
That's another good choice. He was a breakout defender of the year, honestly. Technically a boy playing with grown men, right?
Best right back in the league, as far as I'm concerned.
Best right back in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up, a fixture of the Mexican national team. Unfortunately, the U.S. kind of passed on that, which is a big missed opportunity for the U.S. men's national team. But he's going to do great things. I don't think he's going to stay with the Galaxy this offseason. I think he's gone. He's gone. And I honestly do think that he's going to make his debut with Mexico soon. So we'll look forward to that. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with you. Those are 2 fan favorites this season. Rightfully so, because they stood out. Their performances were, for the most part, consistent. And if we know one thing about this team in the last couple of years, especially this season, is that it's a very inconsistent team. So we talked about the most valuable player. We naturally have to talk about the least valuable player. I think there's a consensus in this show, but we'll talk about that as well. Who was the least valuable player this season for the LA Galaxy?
Kevin Cabral. I mean,
Kevin Cabral.
I've been spamming that meme of Home Alone where Kevin's mom is screaming for him, Kevin, because that's how he always makes me feel.
Yeah, I know.
Aggravating me every time he gets a touch on the ball in the final third.
Matt, I know you share this sentiment.
Kevin Cabral is really bad. Like, I feel like I've just thrown so many stats out. He's also one of our least efficient players in pass and assists per 90.
Oh yeah.
There's sometimes you watch him and you're like, wow, this is like basic stuff he's missing. There's like, I feel like his defenders will always say like, well, he's fast and he gets in good spots, but it's just like, you just don't pay someone that much money for those two specific skill sets. When his soccer IQ is so low on his passing, when his like interpretation of the game is slow, when his effort, and that's not to say like his last game was probably was okay. You know, it was better. It wasn't great, but it was better. But like, dude, this guy waited like all season to give 100% effort, you know? Effort is one of the few things in this life that's controllable, that goes directly into your success, right? And the fact that we were basically banging on Cabral all season to just try is like really disgraceful, to be honest. The fact that his coach had to call him out in a press conference because he doesn't try is like disgraceful. It's like dollar for dollar, I think. Yeah, I think he's got to be our least valuable player. But you know what though? Like, if there's someone getting a pass here, it's definitely Jonah. And probably only because Cabral's an offensive player, it's so obvious when his mistakes are made. Jonah was really bad this year too. Other than the one LAFC goal, I can't remember one game that stood out where you're like, wow, like he was really the best player in that game. And that's saying something, considering that he got his career peaked at 2 million this year on his pay. You know, he was really bad. He was a liability all year. It's funny. I was talking to my wife and I was like, you know, the thing about where Jonah is now in his career, if he was coming from Spain looking like this, like, yeah, he'd end up in MLS. But he's in MLS looking like this. I don't know where he's going to end up now. You know, I don't know if maybe they have a spot on Rolf's third division German team. But his career has gone very, very downhill very quickly.
Well, you said the L word, Matt, which is liability, and he totally becomes a liability every time he's on the field. His timing is so reckless, both in his retention of the ball and in his attempts to receive possession back, and it often leaves us in positions where we're a man down or a man behind, and we're caught out of position, and you know it's an extreme liability, and I think he definitely does not need to be part of this midfield moving forward.
Absolutely. I don't think he's coming back. I think it's very clear. I really honestly wish somebody had asked Greg Vanney that last night. All the members of the press didn't seem to really care that one of our DP's contract was his contract year. His contract is up, right? It's the end of the season. You would think that's a very important question to ask. Hey, by the way, Mr. Vanney, do you see Jonah as part of your plans for 2022? Are you guys in contract negotiations? Is there any interest whatsoever? Nothing.
But let's be real, Chris. You would have just gotten some generic answer about, oh yeah, we're going to take a look at what's going on with the guys this offseason, and then we'll make a decision on what we want to do moving forward. And it, you know,
but you know what?
That's how they play.
Yeah. I think I'm too much off the rails here, but like, geez, here we go. We're going to go down that road, huh?
Let's do it. Let's get it out.
We're going to go down that road. But like, I don't want to go too overstep here, but like, if this was like the Patriots and Tom Brady was coming on a contract year, or this was Green Bay and it was Rodgers, or this was like the Lakers and Kobe, this was like the Heat and LeBron, like no one in their right mind would not ask in a contract year, is this guy coming back? Like the fact that that we go like into a press conference, and not to name names, but nobody asked the question like, hey, one of your most valuable players that you pay the highest amount of salary to is a contract year. What do you think about that? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh my God, it's like,
it's a ball drop. It's a ball drop.
Yeah, it's just like, we wonder why. We wonder why this organization cannot hold itself accountable. And it's like, because no one makes them hold themselves accountable, right? Like the organization And there's stuff, a little, vaccine stuff about why this podcast can't get questions in. But like they wrap themselves in this bubble wrap of access, right? And God forbid you ever ask someone like a question that like really digs deep into what the fans want, or like, hey, why did you make this decision? Why is this player doing this? Is he progressing? Or are we going to sign that guy? Is he going to get benched? Is he going to start? It just like, we can't get mad if the organization continues to not hold itself accountable, if we don't have a person doing it for us, right? Sophie sometimes does it. She gets very direct, but in general, like
I love her.
But in general, like the organization wraps itself in like this like bubble wrap, and there's no touching it, and that's why we continue to be mediocre. So if you're ever wondering why, why you can't find the answers to why Dijon doesn't start, you know why, because it's not allowed to be asked.
Absolutely. You know what? Let's do it. Let's get it out there, right? I gotta. Did you hear that crack? That's my sternum cracking. You see that?
Let's rip into this team, guys. What do you say?
Let's do it. Let's do it. So listen, this team cracked harder than my sternum did just now, okay? This 2021 Los Angeles Galaxy team is the most expensive team in all of MLS. I said this last night on Instagram, okay? There is absolutely no reason why this team finishes 8th in the Western Conference with a -4 goal differential when you have the highest paid striker in the league. Listen, I might lose press access for this, and that's okay, because you know what? At the end of the day, the Galaxy fans out there are feeling exactly the way I feel, and they're wanting to say this, right? So I might lose press access for this. That's fine, because it is not fair for Galaxy fans out there to be left out to dry. This LA Galaxy team, okay, is for everything that we heard this season from the coaching staff, from our GM, this was going to be the year, right? And we were a playoff team. This is what happened, right? A lot of people need to realize this. The LA Galaxy came into this league early on this season as a fresh team. 11 brand new players, okay, most of which were starters. A brand new coaching staff. The league didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what to expect. It was fresh. But you know what? About halfway through the season, other teams kind of figured it out. Wait a minute. Players are different. The coaching staff is different. But this is the exact same Galaxy team from 2018, 2019, and 2020. We know the strategy they're playing here is very one-dimensional. They caught on to us. They learned the strategy. They adapted to us. Our coaching staff was unable to adapt to the league adapting to us. And that's why we ended up in this position yet again, just like 2018, came down to decision day, heartbreak once again, completely unacceptable when you have a salary and the players that you do, completely unacceptable. Let's just call it like it is, right, guys?
It's embarrassing.
Yeah. It's embarrassing, and it's a failure.
Embarrassing.
Yeah,
and
it's like, oh, go ahead, Casey.
No, yeah, and no one's taking responsibility from the front office here, and that's what's the biggest gripe with this entire Galaxy fan base. When you look at the front office, it's just a boys' club of former players and administrators. And from what we've heard from sources close to the podcast who've worked with the Galaxy, and have shared stories of the club wanting to portray a certain image and purposely avoiding marketing certain aspects of Los Angeles because they don't want to seem too ghetto or too urban. They just seem keen on maintaining a financial status quo. There's no direction to this club whatsoever other than keeping the numbers in the green. And it seems like the front office want us to be like the Galaxy Beach Club,
Yeah.
Like we need a reality check. We represent the working class areas of Los Angeles. No one's willing to take the responsibility there. Klein has no balls. If you were to shoulder check this guy in a crowd, he would apologize to you. That's how ballless this guy is.
He's definitely not coming on the show.
Changes need to be made from the top down. And you know what, Galaxy, you can revoke my season tickets. You can do whatever all you want for this little rant, because it'll just show how petty you all are and how worthless you all have been to this organization for the last 5 years.
Okay, my turn. So, so if you watch like Greg Vanny's press conference, this last one, he says like two things that are pretty telling. The first one being that like, you know, we were in the playoffs all season with the exception of 5 minutes. Like I couldn't help but think at that point, it's like, man, I wonder if the captain of the Titanic was like, guys, we were above water for all but the last 10 minutes of the movie. I did a pretty good job. Okay. Like, yes, you were in the playoff line, but it was so obvious how much we were sinking. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you can say it. And then like the other thing he said that was pretty telling was like, well, we learned pretty late in the season that Chicha works pretty good with a second striker. It's like, yeah, really? Like you tried it with Chicha by himself, and then just adding someone as like inept as Zubac made Chicha go 10 goals in 10 games, right? Like, can you imagine if this guy would have just like taken his head out of his butt and like put Dijon in with Chicha, like a real soccer player? They would have crushed the league. But he's just so busy trying to die on that Cabral hill, right? Same way GBS was with people, that he just drove us like directly into the ground. You know, it was like this season and the failure that it became was so massively avoidable. You know, like me, you, Casey, like we like soccer, we follow it as a hobby, right? But like this is not our profession. And even us, you know, as dim-witted as we truly are, in the first 5 games, figured out what was going to undo the Galaxy. Like the idea that like Greg or like the coaching staff was just blind to it, and they're like, oh my God, how could we have found ourselves hitting an iceberg? It's just like, it's either like colossal ignorance or it's a blatant like bald-faced lie, you know?
100%.
So I don't know. I just can't like reconcile that, I guess, in my head.
And
the whole Greg thing, but wow, incredible.
And I agree. Yeah, a lot of that blame is on Vanny because he couldn't decide on a lineup through most of the season. I mean, there were inconsistent starters. He was tinkering with lineups in different formations. We had 3 at the back one game. We had 5 at the back another game.
Yeah.
Questionable and late substitutes like Dejan coming on like the 85th minute in most games. Cabral, I mean, like you said, completely laid out to dry. And as Sophie said, you know, out in the Galaxyverse this past week, we just need to burn his contract because it's absolutely worthless at this point. And Jovelic was given the cold shoulder for whatever reason.
Right.
And it begs the question, is Greg pressured by the front office to play certain players? That's what it's feeling like to me.
Yeah, it feels like that. It's felt like that for several years now. We saw it with Giovanni Dos Santos underperforming game after game after game and still starting, right? And it's the designated player tag, right? AEG wants to make sure that their greatest investment is on the field, right? It is what it is, and we talked about this episode 1.
And if you're wondering why like me, Casey, and Chris are kind of so upset, I'll tell you what, I'll get right to like the nut of it. It's because we pay for our tickets. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, hey Chris, your media pass, did that give you any free tickets? No. Casey, Are you paying full price for your season tickets?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Am I paying full price for my season tickets? Yep. Like every year, it's thousands of dollars in the Galaxy going to every game. Like I don't sell any of my tickets. I know Casey doesn't. Chris doesn't. We travel. It's extra money, and it's like we give all this money to the organization in hopes that they can reach the bare minimum of making playoffs. And like in MLS, making playoffs is like such a joke. Like all they're asking for you to make playoffs is for you to be in the top half of your conference. Like people forget they
7
added
teams.
They legitimately added another slot, the 7th slot, after they found out that we could not make 6. The next year, 2019, they end up adding that slot. It's such a low bar that we can't hit. And like, I think my biggest fear here is like, one, if you're a franchise that has only made playoffs once in 5 years, you're not competitive. You're just not. You're not gonna tell me that we are. We're not a competitive franchise anymore. No. And every year that goes by, we come closer and closer to becoming a relic, just like the other 96ers, right? Just like Houston, just like Dallas, just like the Fire, just like the Revolution were before Bruce got there. You know, we're falling apart. we're falling off the map. We're dinosaurs now. And I know it hurts to say, but like all the jokes that people make about the Galaxy living in the past, that's real. That's really us.
It's
Like
real.
look in the mirror, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the most disappointing part about it is like we put so much effort in, we put so much money into this club, and it just really feels like the organization like couldn't give two cares about us, and some of the players couldn't care less. That's how it feels to me. You know, right or wrong, that's how it feels.
That's how it feels for a lot of people. Listen, I've been getting questions and comments all day since last night. People are frustrated. People are upset. People are sad, especially people that have been with this team for a very long time, right? We were going to do it on this show. We were going to take people's questions and answer it on this show. But you know what? I think we should dedicate an episode specifically for that. I think it would be fair to the fans, and we can compile some good questions from Reddit, Discord, and other social medias. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I always love to hear what everybody likes to what everyone likes to give their take on and hear others' takes on. And there's so many great minds on the Galaxy subreddit, the Galaxy Discord. So
the Galaxy family,
like that for sure.
the Galaxy family Discord, the LA Galaxy subreddit. We have a ton of friends on those platforms. We have a ton of people that are active all day, every day, just talking about the LA Galaxy. Great community. So I think it would be fair to the fans if we did that, if we allowed them that voice, right? And we could kind of amplify that for them. I think that would be a great idea. It's here, guys. We entered the postseason a lot sooner than we expected. I think most of us were pretty confident at the start of the season when we saw the Galaxy play, get some results. We were pretty confident that this team would at least hit the mark and make playoffs. And then it very quickly became apparent that this team was very, very flawed, and we were seeing a lot of the same flaws that we've been seeing for half a decade now, over half a decade. I mean, listen, the last time the LA Galaxy got past the first round in the playoffs was 8 years ago. It's been 8 years since the LA Galaxy got past the first round of the playoffs. I think they actually did it in 2019. They got past Minnesota and went one game, right? We'll give them that. You guys did it once, right? But it's been 8 years since the Galaxy has put in a convincing playoff campaign, and that was 2014. So it is what it is, guys.
What do you guys think for next year then?
Predictions for next year. That's a good one.
I think we definitely need to rebuild the midfield. That needs to be number one. I mean, we're struggling to find possession in the channels. We're lacking a central midfield presence. Obviously we need a more solid central option when we're stuck on the wings. And I honestly want to say good riddance to Jonah Dos Santos, good riddance to Sasha Kleshton, and honestly good riddance to Victor Vasquez. I mean, they're just dead weight at this point in that midfield. And if you had consistency with players like Alvarez, Raveloson, Leggett, and Grandsir, I feel like if you had those four consistently starting in the midfield, I think you would see some pretty good results. And I think, shedding the dead weight, like I said, of JDS, Kleshton, and Vasquez is only going to open up room for better players to
absolutely
fill out the squad depth.
Absolutely. Predictions for next year, Matt. What do you think? What's our biggest need for next season?
I think the first thing is we have to get the Les Miserables on a good foot. I think other than Ryan, he was the only French guy who really kind of came out banging and had a fairly good season.
Yeah.
I think Grandsir came out better in the second half, but probably underperformed his contract. Cabral, I think we already went there. And then Sega Koulibaly, I mean, what a dud that ended up being, right? Like when he wasn't getting burned, he was flopping on the ground holding his shin. So, the French players, they got to get better. I think Casey's right on point with the midfield. You can't have a midfield full of people who can't move. I feel dumb saying that, but that's the truth, right? I'm sure people will say well, Sasha had a good this game, Victor had a good that game, and that's true. But you saw as the season wore on, so did they. And Victor got a lot less mobile. Sasha, outside of PKs, got a lot less mobile. It just wore them down, and they just got overplayed. I think Casey's right. If a lot of the problem is that Greg used Sasha and Victor as a crutch, and because he was always using them as a crutch, he wasn't donating those minutes to other players who probably should have developed. I mean, even like Ryan, right? Like Ryan fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, but in my opinion, he fell off because he was doing so much.
Yeah.
It's one of those guys you're like, okay, Ryan comes out banging goals from the get-go, and Vanny's infinite wisdom is to put him as a deep lying defensive mid, right? Because he has to make sure that Jonah can figure out what has a function on the field. It's like, well, let's make Jonah an offensive player. But you saw, like, he's not an effective offensive player. So then Ryan was playing deep mid, and then he was having to attack too, leaving everybody exposed, So I think Casey's right on point. We need to sign new people. We can't be carrying old weight anymore. We can't be that old team. It just doesn't work in the current MLS. We're losing our charter flights next year. It's back to commercial, so it's only going to get harder.
It's back to Spirit Airlines.
Spirit Airlines, yeah. And then finally, the big question mark about Araujo, right? Like if we lose Araujo, I don't think this team will make playoffs next year. There's just so much that guy does that band-aids so much of the team. Our whole offense runs through that guy. Any game he's had a bad game, we had a bad game. Defensively, he's our fastest guy. He makes up for a lot of people, leaving the center backs exposed. His tackles are great. I mean, I know Casey threw out a lot of stats, but Araujo also finished, I think, 4th place in the league in tackles won. If we lose that guy, it's a colossal step backwards. And in my opinion, Araujo is now at the point where he should leave the Galaxy. I think if he stays any longer, he's only going to get hurt by playing with us. And the reason I say that is because, Araujo is very young. He has a lot of talent. But at a certain point, when you're constantly making up for people's deficiencies, you start learning bad habits.
Yep.
And then the scouts who come see that you have bad habits. And that's not your fault because you're always making up for everybody else, but you're learning the game the wrong way. So I think if Araujo stays any longer, he'll probably regress. I don't think MLS or the Galaxy has anything left to teach him.
He's going to be tainted.
He should take the first exit out. So I think there's a lot to work on. But it's not all negative. I think the upside is that the team's young. Greg's going to have an off season with these guys. I think you just hope to see something different than what we've seen. I'm not one to give my full faith into this idea that like someone is going to all of a sudden become a different person, or that because they tell me they're going to be X when they've been Y. From what I've seen, I don't do that. You're going to have to show me. But I think the hope is in the unknown. It's an irrational hope, to be perfectly honest. But at this point, as Galaxy fans, it's like it's all we really have. So hope for the unknown, everybody.
Absolutely. Now listen, we're gonna wrap this up, and like I said, we're gonna give you guys an individual episode to all the fans. We'll put out the word on social media, Discord, the Reddit. We want to take all your postseason questions, your comments, you guys predictions, and we want to talk about it. Just dedicate an entire hour or so to that specifically. What do you guys say? Is that fair?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fair. And speaking of the fans, I know we're exiting the Galaxy season here a little too earlier than most of us expected. But to all the fans out there who joined us this year, this was our very first year as a podcast, as a show, really. And I have to say, being our first year as a show, it's been very touching to see the outpour of support from Galaxy fans, people that have reached out, people that have stuck with us since day one. We understand that there are other shows out there that you guys watch. This may not be your favorite, but if you're watching us, we thank you anyway, from the bottom of our hearts. This season, we were able to get to about 1,400 plus subscribers, which is not a lot to most people, but to us, every single one of you guys matters.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing. We want to thank you guys for the viewership. We had a total of about 100,000 views. We'll post the analytics to that. Just kind of blowing some smoke up our own butts right now at this point, right? But really, guys, extremely thankful for that. The comments, we always read them. We're always there for you guys. We want to be as fair to you guys as possible. So Again, Chris Maldonado, want to thank you guys. Guys, you have any words for the fans?
Thank you all. Thank you all for everything this season. You guys have been great, and it's been great getting to know you all. And feel free to keep in touch with us on Reddit and on the Discord, because we'll be around.
No, it's been a blast. I think when we first started this, we were hoping just to make a podcast that our moms would enjoy. And it turns out a couple more people than that ended up liking it. No, it's been a lot of fun. It couldn't be done without people from the Discord. Turbo Skin, Sippin' Latte, MSG Free, the always very friendly Vapor, Trooper, G-Man, Bloppy, even Watcha Boy, and then on and then on Reddit, Rod Johnson, Kid Flame, Kevin, the legend Heaven on Avalon, Nate Dottie, Crediz. I'm sure I'm forgetting people on there. Not Jackenstein.
310 local.
310 local. God bless you, man. You're the villain we all deserve. No, it's been a blast. I'm looking forward to next season or whatever this brings in the future.
Right on. So I think we'll end it there on a positive note, guys. I know it hasn't been the results we wanted this season, but from myself, Chris Maldonado, the Galaxy Guy from the Galaxy Guy podcast, I want to thank you guys yet again for your viewership. On behalf of my co-hosts, Matt Granger and Casey Cagle, we'll see you guys pretty soon. Good night.